Hey everybody, Asher here with another One Night in Karazhan preview, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the cards, some of the bosses we know from the new Hearthstone expansion, and kind of compare and take a look at them for the Hearthstone-themed MMORPG that you may have heard of, World of Warcraft, specifically the Tier 4 raid instance from the Burning Crusade, Karazhan, which is Medivh's Tower, which you can see here, and we're just going to dive in, take a look, go around, and look at a few different things that are cards, bosses appearing in the Hearthstone expansion, and kind of try and color and give ourselves a little bit more knowledge. Just, I think it's interesting anyway. And we're going to start with what is the first boss in the prologue wing here, and the last boss of the Karazhan raid, Malchezaar, who is part of the Burning Legion, and when you fight him, he was honestly a very tough boss back in the day, especially if your raid wasn't exactly prepared for it. But he is of the Burning Legion, but I bring him up first because what makes him really interesting to me is that if you look around his area where you fight, compare it again to the opening here with Medivh's Tower, and you have a very different outlook outset. There's like a whole nother area, a whole different plane of existence. You can even see the top of Medivh's Tower here. It's really interesting that Malchezaar kind of exists on the inbounds of reality, kind of close, kind of far away. Maybe we'll get an idea of what Medivh was up to. But actually, you know, let's take a break here to talk about Medivh for a second. He does actually appear in Karazhan, although he has gotten a bit of a sprite update since the last time I played. I just said sprite, but a model update since the last time I played this. He appears standing in front of the chess event, which there is some chess-themed pieces in this game, including so far the Black King, which is a boss, and Protect the King. And I believe there's a Paladin card, Ivory Knight, as well. However, if you look at the chess event and the chessboard here, those of you that like the WoW movie may appreciate this board, that it is Blackhand versus King Lane. So there's not really chess pieces per se like maybe from Hearthstone, but remember, this is also after the fall of Medivh's Tower. One thing to really keep in mind is Medivh, what was he like maybe before this fall, before going crazy? Was there Sargeras corruption or something? And I think that's worth taking a quick peek at the Master's Chambers, which is, I would dare say, Medivh's bedroom, and while it is looking all kind of crusty and overrun here, I just want you to pay attention to one thing in particular, and that is the bed. This is like somewhere between a sacrificial altar, just an altar, or some huge pedestal or something. All I'll say is that Medivh probably partied down a lot. So let's just keep that in mind in terms of maybe One Night in Karazhan is not as much of a stretch of the lore as people make it out to be. Maybe we just met Medivh at the wrong time in his life or his unlife. But he's not the only character that's been introduced in some of the trailers. Another one to look at is actually Barnes. I do want to start with Barnes here. He's a legendary card. Head of the Opera House, and I bring him up because there are a few things you'll see. The what I've labeled as the Pompous Thespian there is one of the ghost units on the way there. It's not actually what it's called, but it's actors just waiting behind there. Kind of looks the same, talks the same, but Barnes. Interesting fact is that you cannot actually fight Barnes in Karazhan until you take out Murrows. So Murrows is a required fight. Murrows is another card in the Karazhan One Night in Karazhan set, and a interesting boss in of himself in Karazhan, albeit you see that I accidentally killed him with one shot. If I guess it's 1/1 health, so you should have been stealthed a little bit longer. But Murrows, Barnes maybe don't necessarily get along well with each other because Murrows actually tells Barnes to stop the plays. But once we get over to the Opera House, Barnes will give his introduction in one of three random boss fights.
Things are not what they seem. For tonight, your eyes may not be trusted. Take, for instance, this quiet, elderly woman waiting for a visit from her granddaughter. Surely there is nothing to fear from this sweet, gray-haired old lady. But don't let me pull the wool over your eyes. See for yourself what lies beneath those covers. And now, on with the show!
I lucked out in getting the Big Bad Wolf as one here, so we can see actually a card for Kindly Grandmother right here, which you get to talk to a few times and has one of the best little dialogue options in the game here. You get to ask about her eyes, you get to ask about her ears, then you get to ask about what fat loot you have, and she says,
"The better to own you with."
So we get the big bad wolf, which is its own fun fight, albeit we're fighting it with a level 99 character, so it's kind of neither here nor there. But there are 3 bosses from the upper wing that are actually 3 bosses in the Karazhan tier 4 instance: Romulo and Julian, big bad wolf, and the crone, which is pretty much the wicked witch of the west from Dorothy, or whatever you want to call it. But if we look at the other bosses that are available here, you have Murrow, who's kind of on the first floor. We have all of our kitchen area here, and we have really the kitchen's kind of overrun with rats and ghost servants and everything. And there's plates and stuff out, but not a lot. There's like, I guess you wouldn't call it rotting food. But we don't have a silverware golem sitting around anywhere. I've heard people allude to the fact that there is a magic mirror somewhere in Karazhan, but I do not believe it is anywhere in the tier 4 raid. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. But where we do get a little bit more parallels between the World of Warcraft raid and Hearthstone is actually the menagerie and the later part of the tower, which One Night in Karazhan calls the Spire. So the Curator, he is the first big gear check boss of the Burning Crusade. If you can beat him, you can pretty much beat everything up to Malchezaar. And the Curator is a interesting fight because although it is a menagerie that he is guarding, you don't see a bunch of other animals or zoos or anything like that. But he's just a big golem that wanders around. There's no swimming pool of mana that I see anywhere, but easily taken out as well. And you also do run into a few ethereals here. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say any of them equate to the ethereal peddler. There is a little Easter egg in one of the preview trailers that has what looks like Archthief Ramfrem actually stealing from Medivh's tower. But in truth, there are a lot of ethereals stealing from his tower, so it could be Ramfrem, probably is, but it could be something else as well. We also have another boss here who some of you who maybe didn't raid Kara before and are just focusing on getting to the end may not realize that Testadar Ilhoof is actually a hidden boss. All you gotta do is go behind a conspicuous bookshelf, and there he is. He has an imp with him. I was a little surprised that it was called Malchezaar's imp, because Testadar is the one that has an imp sitting with him in there, but you can see he's a satyr. He doesn't look terribly different from other ones that were in the game at the time, but those are all there. And then we have the Spire, Shade of Iran, which is another fight that was very different from what people might have been used to in vanilla while going into here, especially where you're supposed to stand and stay in the fire instead of run away from it. In addition, for the Spire, we have Netherspite, which is a fight that was already previewed before in terms of having different portal mechanics. And that was another fight or another area where, well, it was very different from raiding at the time because you had to move around a lot. And I'm curious to see how the adventure works it out. I'm still curious if they're going to introduce any cards that have any kind of these, not so much portal mechanics, there are 5 portals available, but if there'll be anything that has like any of these laser beams, you have cards that are adjacent to each other that work from there. Now, if there are 2 bosses that I can't necessarily preview here, one is the final boss because we don't know who it is, albeit there's plenty of speculation about it, and then also Nightbane, who I don't have the means to unlock and fight here, albeit Nightbane is an undead dragon in the Karazhan instance, whereas it seems like we're fighting Nightbane more in the flesh here, so who knows what that means. Just remember as well that Hearthstone always takes some liberties with the WoW lore. Ragnarok's Light Lord is actually a very good indication of that. And not all the cards that are in Real so far necessarily have a connection with the Karazhan instance. We do have, for instance, like Firelands Portal. Firelands wasn't even introduced when Kara came out. Babbling Book, Bookworm, things like that don't appear anywhere in the Kara instance. Karazhan, at least having a bunch of floating cutlery and a spoon and a teapot. It's interesting thematically, but once again, it doesn't appear in the raid and everything else. But that isn't to say there won't be more connections as more cards are revealed, and we will know the full set definitely by this time next week, if not earlier. So we'll keep a lookout for that. I'm happy to do a follow-up video with this. But like I said, just a quick look. I think some things to look out for maybe for how Karazhan or One Night in Karazhan will progress has a lot to do with maybe Medivh obviously has always been up to no good or always had his own kind of side ideas here, even if he was a bit of a playboy once upon a time, at least as his room indicates. But we also have just the fact that there's plenty of demonic influences, there could always be something lurking in the background. Who knows? We'll find out soon. Remember, Hearthstone, don't take it too seriously, but it's always fun and interesting to look at the WoW side of it as well. So thanks for watching. Feel free to leave your thoughts, speculation, or concerns in the comments. Correct me on anything I might not have gotten right the first time, and we'll do this again soon. Take care.